What's going on, everybody? It's Joel here, and today we're going to be talking about the performance of the Reebok Nano 12s. So if you haven't watched my initial impressions video of the Nano 12s, I highly recommend that you check that one out before you start this video. In that one, I go over the construction differences between the Nano 11s and the Nano 12s. Today, we're mainly going to be focused on the actual just performance of the Nano 12s and what it's been like to use these for my workouts in the last 3 weeks or so. But first, we will talk about some of the construction differences that I found out in the time gap between that video and this video. So the Nano 12s do use an updated version of the flex weave knit. It's a little bit more taut this time around, and it doesn't breathe quite as well, but it's still plenty flexible. Another thing that you're gonna notice when you first get these shoes in is that this top panel that has like the OG flex weave, it's gonna press down into your toes a little bit, but it will break in and it will go away. It's gonna become a lot more comfortable. Another thing that they changed with the upper of the Nano 12s is that there's just a lot more going on. So there's a TPU overlay in the middle of the shoe that is basically the middle part of the vector, and that gives the shoe a much more locked down feel in the midfoot. Around the ankle collar, there is like some TPU webbing on top of a ripstop material, which gives the actual like ankle collar a lot more structure. Even though they did reduce like the height of the TPU clip, it still feels plenty secure in the ankle collar. They also reduced the amount of cushioning in the ankle collar, and they chopped down the height of the heel so it doesn't rub into your Achilles. And that was one of the big problems with the Nano 11s. If you had that issue, you will not have that issue in the 12s. Another change that they made is the tongue is now secured to the laces, but it still does not have any gussets on the side, and it does still want to slip over to one side. It's just not as bad as it was on the 11s, which just had like a free floating tongue. The midsole of the shoe is the same exact Float Ride Energy midsole that was in the Nano 11s. The drop is the same, 7mm drop. The amount of cushioning is the exact same. The carrier foam is the exact same. The outsole is the exact same between the two shoes. The Rope Pro, unfortunately, is the exact same as well between the two shoes. So the failure point of the Nano 11s was in the medial side at that Rope Pro lip. It would pull off and basically become unusable for rope climbs, and that is still an issue with the Nano 12s. So I'd say even though that the traction for these shoes going up the rope is excellent, I actually really like rope climbing in my Nano 11s and my Nano 12s. But I would just not recommend it just because the durability in that area is just not reliable. Now, a small little detail that's changed between the two shoes is the handstand push-up clip. It actually is a little bit longer, protrudes a little bit further out, and helps a lot more with handstand push-ups. With the 11s, I didn't really notice it. With the 12s, it's actually pretty noticeable. So with all the material differences, the Nano 12s do weigh a little bit more than the outgoing model. I weighed the 12s in at 11.7 ounces for a men's size 10. All right, so when it comes to fit, in the initial impressions video, I said it's probably okay to go true to size, though I did go half down with my Nano 11s. I am going to take that back and say that the Nano 12s do run a little bit bigger than the Nano 11s. This time around, I feel like the 9.5 or the size down it's the way to go with this shoe. After a little bit of break-in, these things open up and relax quite a bit. So the 10s for me, they fit okay. There was a lot of space in the toe box, so my feet would slide around quite a bit. With the size down, they fit a lot better. There's still plenty of room for my toes to splay in the toe box. They're still plenty wide, but they do have a much more fitted feel, and I greatly prefer the half size down over my normal true to size. If you have an extremely wide foot, then I'd say you're probably still gonna wanna go true to size. But I think for most people, sizing half down is the way to go. If you have flat feet, the arch on the shoe might bother you a little bit. It didn't really get me that much until I was doing like a long set of double unders. But otherwise, I think for the majority of people, you should be okay with the amount of arch that is in the Nano 12s. So when it comes to running, I thought the Nano 11s were actually a pretty good shoe to run in for someone like me that uses a mid-foot, forefoot strike. I thought that they were comfortable enough. The heel on the Nano 11s is still pretty clunky. You do get that float ride, so it does take the impact off of heel striking quite a bit, but the heel just generally is pretty clunky. On the Nano 12s, the heel construction is basically the same exact thing. You still get that same exact float ride, but whatever they did to the forefoot of this shoe makes it feel like you get a lot more control and you get to really utilize the float ride that's in the forefoot of the shoe. The toe control on the Nano 12s is just, it's a lot better than it is on the Nano 11s, which kind of had this almost like elf shoe feel to it. Like it would really rock you through your step. With the Nano 12s, you can really push through that step a lot better. So when it comes to like running on asphalt and especially running on the Assault Runner, I felt like the Nano 12s were just a lot more comfortable to use. And that also carried over to double unders. The forefoot cushioning on these shoes is much better utilized than it was on the Nano 11s. On the Nano 11s, I feel like you were too far forward on your toes and you didn't get that forefoot float ride cushioning. On the Nano 12s, whatever they did, like I said, I don't know what they did, and I've asked, and they said they did absolutely nothing to the midsole of the shoe, but whatever they did makes it feel like there's more cushioning at the forefoot. When it came to things like box jumps, I thought the Nano 12s were also very good. They're light on your feet, they are comfortable, they're responsive. Doing multiple and long sets of box jumps is no problem in these shoes. I did notice that my feet would shift around on like box jump overs, but when it came to just like standard box jumps, I thought that these did really well. Okay, so I just finished filming the review and I'm doing B-roll and I totally forgot to talk about burpees. Burpees are very comfortable to do in the 12s. The toe bumper helps out quite a bit when you're trying to get up. So I'm gonna do a set of penalty burpees for you guys to make up for forgetting. The area that I hated the Nano 11s in was just, I hated lifting in them. And it wasn't because I thought that the midsole was soft or I thought that the shoes were unresponsive. It's that whatever they did with the toe made it feel like you were just like always rocking back and forth. If you planted your toes, your heels would come up. If you put your heels down, your toes would come up. And it just was not good for lifting for me personally. In the Nano 12s, these shoes are actually pretty good to lift in. I'm not gonna say that they are my absolute favorite shoe to lift in because there are just better shoes for me in general. I typically prefer a flatter shoe, but the 12s are vastly better than the 11s. And when I asked about it, they said that they didn't do anything to the midsole. They didn't adjust the toe spring angle at all. All they did was change the upper to make it better for lifting. And in the past, we've seen other shoes do better for lifting based off the Nano 11 platform in like the Nano 11 Fronings and even the Pursuits. Both of those shoes, they feel flatter in general, and the Nano 12s feel much flatter than the Nano 11s do. So when it comes to things like Olympic weightlifting, I found like there was no problems getting my full foot set on the ground with the Nano 12s. I feel like they might have just like elongated the amount of upper material so that it is a little bit more relaxed so that you could push your toes into the ground without completely flexing the shoe and pulling the heel off the ground. For barbell cycling, I thought that these shoes did very well. That's an issue that I had with the Nano 11s. Whenever I would go to cycle the barbell, I felt like I would get pulled too far into my toes. In the 12s, I do not have that issue. I thought that barbell cycling in these shoes was very good. I thought that cleans felt very stable in the 12s. I did notice, however, that if I didn't catch a snatch perfectly, then I could get pulled on to my toes. But generally, I felt okay snatching in my 12s. I'm not going to say that they're the best shoe to snatch in for me personally, but they're a lot better and much more usable than the 11s were. And when it comes to things like squats, I thought the Nano 12s did really well, whether it's a back squat or a front squat. I think you do get to utilize the mechanical advantage of having that slightly higher heel with the Nano 12s, at least a lot better than you did with the Nano 11s. But some people aren't going to like the fact that there's quite a bit more midsole on the Nano 12s and Nano 11s than there are on basically any other training shoe out there right now. That's mainly gonna be an issue if you plan on deadlifting heavy, but I gotta be honest with you, I still was able to deadlift up to like 90% of my 1 rep max just fine. It didn't really bother me that much that I was just leaning a little bit more forward. When it comes to like a workout, you're really not gonna notice that extra stack height at the heel of the shoe. And once again, it doesn't really compress on you that much. My biggest gripe with the Nano 12s when it came to lifting was just the fact that the toe box is a little bit squishy. So for movements that require you to almost like pivot, like a devil's press where you're really torquing into the ground, or a dumbbell snatch, or a dumbbell box step over, I felt like my feet or my toes would slide around a little bit too much. If you have wider toes than me, you might not notice that as much, but I found that that was just something that you need to get used to when using the Nano 12s. It's not that big of an issue because the lateral stability on these shoes is actually really good, but you will notice it when you're doing a few particular movements. All right, so the Nano 12s retail for $135, which is a $5 premium over the outgoing model. And in my opinion, I'd say that $5 is completely warranted. I wouldn't even buy the Nano 11s on sale at this point. The Nano 12s are just that much better of a shoe. Whatever they did with the Nano 12s makes these feel so much more stable than the Nano 11s. And I still think the Nano 11s were okay for certain movements, certain workouts, but I could not lift in these at all. With the Nano 12s, they feel more like the Froning 11 Nanos, and these were one of my favorite shoes from last year. If you're gonna pick between the two shoes, it's really splitting hairs. I would just go with whichever one you think looks better or whichever one fits your budget better. The Nano 12s obviously are gonna fit your budget better, but I personally like the way that the Fronings look. So if it were up to me, I'd probably still go with the Fronings, but I would not mind using the Nano 11s. I actually really like using the Nano 12s. There hasn't been a single workout where I've second guessed what I was doing, whether it was lifting, whether it was running, whether it was like plyometric movements. I thought that the Nano 12s handled everything really, really well. Are they the best Nano? In my opinion, I don't think that they're still gonna beat like the Nano 6 or the Nano 8, and maybe for you guys, the Nano 9, but they are much better than the Nano 11s. And I think I would probably take them over the Nano 10s because they're just a lot lighter, and I think they're a lot more versatile, even though I did really like the Nano 10s. When you're comparing these to like the Nike Metcons, I think the Metcon 7s to me are still going to be the better like competition shoe. They're going to be the better lifting shoe for me, but I think the easier to wear day-to-day training shoe is going to be the Nano 12s. They're a lot easier to like move around in, they're better to run in, and for those workouts that don't require a really, really heavy barbell, I still think the Nano 12s are probably going to be my pick then. Now, when it comes to comparing these versus my current favorites, the Strike Haze and the Rads, I would still say I'd probably go with those shoes over these because those, for me, have more going for them than the Nano 12s. I can lift in those better. I still think that those are very, very comfortable to run, jump around, and do all my plyometric stuff in. And I think the Rads look better than the Nano 12s, but I do think the Nano 12s are actually a pretty good looking shoe as well. Now, one thing that the Nano 12s have over the Rads and Haze is that they don't cost as much. So if you want pretty similar performance and you don't want to spend as much money as you would on like the Reebok X Nanos and the Rad or the Haze, then I think the next best option is going to be the Nano 12s. These are an extremely versatile training shoe and they are just leagues better than the outgoing model. So if you are a Reebok fan, if you're a Nano fan, I think you've got to get the Nano 12s. These are an excellent pair of training shoes. They're one of the better training shoes that Reebok has put out in a while, and I really like to see that Reebok has come back with something that's usable. I can see myself using these for a lot of workouts this year. So if you guys have any questions about the Reebok Nano 12, feel free to leave them in the comment section. And as always guys, please hit that like button, subscribe, and thanks for watching.